This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Linode, high-performance cloud hosting for everyone. Visit linode.com/MacVoices and take $20 off your first server package. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is part 3 of our 3-part discussion on MacVoices Live of Apple's WWDC keynote. We covered a whole lot of topics, obviously not all of them, but had a lot of interesting debates, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. We'll be back to a regular MacVoices schedule with the next edition, but for now, let's get back to the panel. So how about other things? I mean, there were a whole pile of announcements. Did anything else catch anybody's particular interest? I know that there were so many things. It was like drinking from a fire hose. You really have to go back and look at notes or summaries to remember everything that they showed.
I liked how they came up with that thing.
And look at the. Oh, go ahead, Frank. Sorry.
I was going to say I like that thing in HomeKit. We're going to do was it True Tone for the house lights?
Oh no, where
right.
it does the
right.
color change throughout the
Yes,
day.
yeah.
Which
I thought that was
what
pretty
that
nifty.
feature is called.
Isn't that True Tone?
No, not. It's True Tone on your display where it matches the ambient color throughout the day, but in HomeKit, it's like adaptive lighting or something. I can't remember what they're calling.
Is it like night shift for your lights?
Yeah, it's kind of like
essentially.
night shift for your lights.
Basically.
Yeah.
That's clever for people who don't want to put it in themselves. Yeah, I've had my lights manually doing that as long as I've had Hue lights. So,
yeah. Now, the idea that I find compelling in this is that it has the potential to be a usable interface, whereas Hue has an absolutely crap interface, just straight up.
yes.
So I think this could be a much easier way for people to get the light tint to change throughout the day.
It would make it more approachable for somebody who's not really just an absolute light.
Yes. Now, I haven't found how to set that up yet in the Home app, but granted, we've had this operating system for 24 hours now?
Yeah.
So I haven't had a chance to do much digging, but I do want to play with that feature.
That's intriguing. I had not heard that. Thank you.
Two things that I'm surprised. One got a passing mention during this discussion, and the other one hasn't been touched on at all. But the apps library feature.
Stacks for iOS.
I don't know if I'll ever use it. It's interesting.
It looks great to me, but why isn't it on iPad?
That's a fair question.
That's a really good question.
It is. Yeah.
A lot of those app features aren't.
Yeah, but I like that idea because it feels like if I download a new app, then I have to go find it as to where it went. And if this way, if I have an idea of if it's a new photo app, let's just say, then I know it's going to go where all the other photo apps are. What I'm not completely clear on is
in my photos folder.
Yes, and
well, it's gonna create the photos folders for you.
I've given up on organizing my apps beyond the first 2 screens. I just search for them.
Yeah, but what if you forget the name of the app you downloaded?
It's gone.
Yeah, you can't work with that.
It's just gone.
And I have a lot of apps on my devices that I'll never use again because I forgot them and I'll never see them.
Yeah. And the nice thing is those uninstall automatically at some point and just leave an icon behind. So it's almost
Only
like
if you have that turned on.
You have to have it turned on.
I definitely have it turned on because
I didn't know that.
I have that problem where I install apps and then forget about them.
So Jeff,
I think that was iOS 12.
What feature is that? You can activate that so that it and do you specify the duration of time that it waits before it
Offload
deletes?
unused apps is what it's called.
Yeah. So it's in iOS 13 already. Yeah. So as Brittany said, it's called offload, and I think it's kind of like iCloud Photos when you don't download all the originals onto the device. It's kind of watching how much space you have, and if you're running short. And then it starts offloading the apps that you haven't used in a while. And if you ever, touch the icon again, it sort of re-downloads it.
Okay.
And it keeps the data, so you can just download it back and go back to using it.
Jeff, have you had a
Excellent.
chance to play with app libraries? Whatever.
No, because I haven't put iOS 14 on an iPhone.
Oh, okay.
I have.
Oh, who said that?
Brett did.
Brett. So my question is, how much control do I have over this? I mean, if I turn it on, do all my photos get? They automatically get sucked into the photo library, and that's it, or I can have a photo library.
You mean app library? I messed with you.
Have something outside.
It has full control. So when you put two apps in a folder and it suggests the title for the folder.
Right.
It's those categories, and it's basically it surfaces what you've used most recently, so it's great for finding your most used apps. But as far as keeping, like, every little section of it gets a subfolder. I have a lot of apps, but I don't see it being any faster than just using Siri to search, or Spotlight to search for your apps. And they put it shows up on the far, when you swipe all the way to the right, then it comes up. So basically it wants you to look through all your screens of apps, and then when you give up, you go one more, and there's your app library.
But they suggest you hide most of those pages.
But you still have to actively do that. I feel like people's default is going to end up being 8 pages of apps, and then that they don't organize or look at, and then the library.
Yeah.
So hang on. So first of all, you can hide pages of apps that you don't want to scroll through. You can just have them not show up. So you can tell it, show me my first home screen or my first 2 home screens, and then the rest just hide them. And the other thing you can do is you can set the you can set it up so then whenever you download a new app, you can sort of decide what you want it to display on some home screen, whatever home screen it wants to go to, or just never put it on any home screen. Just put it in the library, and then if you want it on your home screen, you can kind of find it either by search or by scrolling through the library, and then dig it up and put it on the home screen that you did keep.
Which is the default? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's a slightly better organized version of Launchpad. Did anyone ever actually use Launchpad? Yeah, I know. Okay.
Well,
anyway, sorry, Brittany. What were you saying?
No, I think it's a much better version of Launchpad, right? Because Launchpad is the gazillion unorganized home screens. Whereas this thing, I don't know how good it's going to be at sort of forming these smart folders. But if it is reasonably good at it, if you're like, I know I wanted to, experiment with this photo app, but I forget exactly which photo app it was and what its name was. Hopefully it's created some sort of smart folder with, photo or image processing apps, and you can just go to the library, open that one up and scroll through that, and hopefully you'll recognize it when you see it. Hopefully.
But how is that really different from just using, I suppose you have categories. I so anal retentively organize all of my apps as I download them into folders. Like, I guess the utility of it is lost on me because my folders are better than any smart folders it builds. Yeah.
Marina, what's the default behavior? Like the default settings for all of that.
I don't remember.
I want to know what my clients' phones are going to look like.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay.
Because we've had this for a whole of 36 hours, so
Well, you've already obviously played with all your settings.
It's been so long since I've adjusted that setting, but yeah, I'm sure that the first time you install it on either on a new device or on an existing device, since it hasn't been an option before, I'm sure it'll go to a default setting. But yeah, it's definitely something you can set. You can decide. Yeah. So that way you don't clutter. You don't create a gazillion home screens at all. And the problem with downloading apps now, oftentimes, if you have an unorganized phone, is that you download a new app, it goes to the very end, and then you're trying to find it, and God knows where it went. But if you have most of stuff hidden, and you download a new app, there's only so many places it can show up on a home screen. And at that point, you can decide whether you want to see it or whether you want to only access it by search.
Okay.
So the other feature, I took us on App Library, now I'll take us to the other one. Is anybody else anxious to use the picture-in-picture feature?
An iPhone.
Yeah, not on my phone.
Really?
No,
is anybody here under
change.
35? I want to hear from them.
What did you say, Marina?
Is anybody here under 35 years of age? I want to hear from those people, because that's about the time I got my bifocals. I was a little older than that, but not much. And there's really not much picture-in-picture I can do.
Yeah, for me, the idea of let's make the video smaller and more distracting.
Yeah.
Not that appealing.
Yeah, and a 0.5 font. That's not going to do it when I'm watching a news broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
I want to use it for FaceTime. I am excited for it for FaceTime. If for no other reason that it doesn't completely disorient the other person when I have to go look at something else in an app. And why can't I see your face? What's wrong?
Yeah,
and
that sounds good.
Well, and that's the way I feel about some other things, because by its very nature, video takes over the whole screen. And now I have the option, just like on the iPad, that, okay, if I want video to continue to play, I can do it in the picture, but then I can go be also checking the mail or, doing something actually productive and still be having that video on there. And, for all that filler information. And then when something pops up that I really want to see, I just kick it back to full screen.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah, and also you might not be actually watching the teeny tiny window in the corner for the video. Maybe you have some video playing, and you're just using the audio as a cue for something where you might want to go back to it and bring up the actual full screen video. And in the meantime, you're just sort of half listening to it and doing something else.
True.
That's how a lot of my Zoom calls go during the day.
So one thing that really surprised me was that you're going to be able to run iOS apps on ARM Macs right out of the box. No catalyst, no nothing. Just, you can just run them.
Yeah.
Surprised.
Is that good news or bad news?
What apps would that apply to for you?
Well, I'm just surprised that they did it. I mean, it's it's kind of been a thing that they're like, no, you don't, those things shouldn't be mixed. They've been saying that for years. I mean, I don't think there was any technical difficulty. iOS apps have been running on Macs for over 10 years. It's called the simulator. But
yeah, but that's simulator is used for people who know what they're doing. Now it's gonna be available to everybody.
Well, but the point is, there's no technological. They could have flipped that switch at any time. They could have had universal binaries. Developers could have shipped Intel versions with they could have. And one thing I wonder about, touchscreen Macs, I want that.
Your touchscreen Mac is pronounced iPad Pro.
No, but I want to be able to run. In fact, I'm thinking I want a Mac that's in more or less an iPad Pro form factor. So, I can carry it around. I can run, Xcode on it. I can run, all my iPad apps. And
I'd like both. I'd like to have an iPad that I can choose to run Mac OS on, or flip a switch and have it go into tablet mode for those situations where I just want a tablet UI, but then be able to put it on my desk and get to real work.
Doesn't need,
It's
you know,
pronounced Surface.
Why do I have to flip a switch?
No,
Exactly.
it said Mac OS.
But starting in a few months, Mac OS is going to be able to run iPad apps and Mac apps. All you do is double click on them and they open and they run side by side with regular Mac apps.
Well, it's not going to be a couple of months, right? Because that's only going to happen on ARM Macs.
That's what I said.
Right, but they're not going to. Well, no, they said computer this year, right?
Before the end of the year.
All right.
What I found interesting and kind of scary is that it's for the developer, it's an opt-out. It's not an opt-in, which kind of scares me.
I think developers can check a box.
Right, but as I said, it's an opt-out. So if you don't proactively do something, or if you forget to do something, your iPhone, or your iPad on-screen drawing app is going to show up in a Mac App Store, and God forbid somebody buys it and tries to use it, because as Brett would attest, people do not read app descriptions.
Well, somebody was pointing out, and my app's not in the Mac App Store, but I guess it was Jeff Johnson, and he's in there, and he's like, well, wait a minute, are there now going to be, 100 iOS apps for every Mac app in the Mac App Store, and now nobody's going to be able to find native Mac apps before, so native Mac developers are really screwed? I don't know. I mean, hopefully they'll have a filter that'll say, show me just the native Mac apps.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by Linode. You can build it on Linode. By visiting linode.com/MacVoices, you can take $20 off your first server package. So what are you buying? You are buying a service that delivers dedicated CPUs, distributed applications, hosted websites, and CI/CD environments. You are buying native SSD storage, a 40 gigabit network, and industry-leading processors, so your website or hosted service will be as fast as possible and as responsive as possible. You are buying a spot in one of Linode's 10 worldwide data centers, including the newest in Mumbai. You are buying their new Cloud Manager feature with an improved user interface. You are buying one-click installs of things like WordPress, Minecraft, VPNs, and much more. That's what you're buying when you visit linode.com/MacVoices, and you get $20 off your first server package to boot. Get your next project off the ground and into the cloud at linode.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Linode for their support of MacVoices. It's going to have to develop. I don't see the appeal of running most iPad apps on a Mac.
Same.
I can tell you where the appeal is, and it's not for us. People that are iPhone users and iPad users that get a Mac, they don't have to think about what they're doing. It's literally the same application.
Yeah.
Seamless.
No friction. Yeah.
But also,
For people like us, that just sounds horrible. Because
But without a touchscreen Mac, I mean, using an iOS app on a Mac is crippling to me. Like a good iOS app is built for touch.
well,
And to use it on.
if there's a native Mac app, that's probably what I want to use. But for me, I think this is great, because right now, it's like sort of like when I'm on my Mac, I still need to keep my phone or my iPad handy because maybe there's some, I want to control the sprinklers or something. And, I could probably do that with the mouse.
Yeah. Okay.
And, I would like to be able to just bring that up on my Mac and not go like, where did I put my, phone?
I hadn't thought about that. I'm going to install the Wemo app when I get an ARM-based Mac.
Yeah. And then, the other thing is you're not considering that, they have just added mouse support to iPad apps. So a lot of iPad apps are now going to start being, they're the convergence, I was really struck by the convergence is both ways. The Mac, they're sort of pushing an iOS direction, but they're also pushing iOS apps, especially iPad apps, sort of in the Mac way. And did you notice? Maybe this was in the State of the Union, but like if you've made an iPad app and it's already supporting the multiple slide over and stuff, so you bring it over, and I think this might even work if just a straight iOS app, not even Catalyst. It's like, oh well, look, I can resize the window on the Mac, and this iOS app, the window resizes correctly. And some of them even support multiple windows. Oh, I can open up multiple documents in multiple windows on the Mac. And if they've, and they were just iPad apps, but if they were modern iPad apps, they already, kind of work that way. So, there's kind of a convergence where, yeah, some of these apps would make sense. But again, it's like at this point, why not make a touchscreen? Let's go the last 10% and make a touchscreen Mac. So then you've got your choice. Just like now. Well, with my iPad, I can throw it on the Magic Keyboard and use a mouse, or I can rip it off and use it as a touch device. Well, hey,
that's called Sidecar.
Does that?
Well, and it's not out of the question at all. Apple's clearly open to the idea of a combination input device.
Well,
touch,
I think it might have been out of the question on January 1st, but times are changing. So yeah, that's why I'm sort of looking and like, hey, maybe, speculate what could be next. And maybe this could be next. I never would have dreamed that before the mouse support was added a couple of months ago. And then you look at what they announced yesterday and it's like, wow, this is the direction they're headed.
Now, I made my sidecar comment in a sort of flippant way, but at the same time, I think that's Apple's philosophy or logic right now, which is if you want a touch interface on a Mac, you have an iPad, or at least you should, because you're a good Apple citizen, and now you just use Sidecar with your Mac, and now you have a touch interface Mac when you're at your Mac.
Jeff, I agree with you, and I guess I have trouble seeing certain sophisticated Mac apps. I just denigrated iOS apps. That's not what I meant. But I have trouble seeing certain Mac apps running on an iPad realistically. But I can easily see probably 95% of the apps that I use on the iPad running on the Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And of those, a very high percentage would work with a mouse interface as opposed to a touch interface. So it feels like it's easier to take one and move it to the other than vice versa.
Well, they've already done it, or they are doing it.
I'm going to go ahead and admit that a lot of my favorite synthesizer apps are on iPad, and I would love to be able to run them on my Mac.
Yeah.
Mm.
As much of a naysayer as I may have seemed up until this point, I just took a look at what apps I use most on my iPad and realized, that would be really cool.
It sounds like in a few months you'll be able to.
But Brett, why? What does bringing those apps over to the Mac?
Hopefully it means easier integration with things like Logic. Right now I have to go through a whole system. If I want to be able to control a synthesizer on my iPad with a MIDI keyboard and record it on my Mac, that's a whole environment I have to have set up. But if I can just run the synthesizer directly on my Mac, I've got my MIDI to USB already hooked in. If that layer became transparent and I could just output from this software synthesizer as if it were just like an AU plugin into Logic, it would mean I didn't need my iPad anymore, and I would like that.
And
not entirely, but
Yeah.
It looks to me like if you're running an iOS app on macOS, it's now not in a sandbox, and it's fully integrated with the file system.
That would be amazing.
Much easier to share, documents and include those apps in a workflow. Whereas now, to me, the iOS, it's really hard to, integrate, a workflow of multiple apps, especially a workflow that includes stuff on the Mac.
And Jim, that may have been the best point made, because one of the appeals of iOS for so many people is that sandboxing, is the security, is you don't have to worry nearly as much about hacking or malware or any of that.
It's not an appeal for me.
Well, not for you and not for probably everybody here, but that's one of the big appeals of iOS. And what I would hate to see is and this would hurt you, is to bring that same further lockdown brought to the Mac OS, because that would kill a lot of apps.
Not what they're doing.
Well, I hope not.
It was real fast. Obviously, I don't have an ARM machine to try this, but in the demos, they were racing through, and some of the stuff I saw, and they were like, "Oh, let's open a document in this iOS thing," and they're like, "Oh, look, the standard file picker comes up." So to me, it looked like, okay, this app has full access to the file system, just like a Mac app does. So if it's running on iOS, it's in its sandbox. But if it's running on Mac OS, it's not. And technically, I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be the case, because, the sandbox is something that an iOS app runs in. It's not part of the app. So if you take the app and run it on Mac OS, it's going to be in the Mac OS environment, which means it's, a much more liberal environment for, everything's, shared.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I think this would be great. I'd love to have this as, here's a machine. I can run all these, apps, both iOS apps and Mac OS apps. And, I can carry it around. Like right now, when I travel, I tend to carry an iPad and a Mac. I would love to just carry one.
Yeah,
I agree.
Guys,
100%.
I hate to pull the plug on this. I decided to let this go a little bit longer, but we probably need to wrap it up. And I definitely want to take just a minute and ask everybody to go around the horn and let folks know where you can be found, if you want to be found after this, and so they can contact you and discuss things further or see what else you do. So I'm going to just take it again on my screen as it comes up. Mark, you get the first pick or first comment.
First comment. Easiest place to find me, Twitter, MarkFuccio at Mark Fuccio, or same thing at LinkedIn.
Great. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Sure.
Brett?
I'm at brettterpstra.com and every social media service as TTSCOFF.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, happy to.
Frank Petrie?
Let's see. I'm at ympnow.com, every social media service at fpetrie, and I write monthly for SEO Magazine.
Great. Jeff?
I am Jay Gamet on Twitter and Instagram, so hit me up and Google me. I think you can find me on like pretty much every show ever.
And we're darn glad it is. Thanks, Jeff. Jim?
I'm from ProVUE.com, PROVUE.com, and make Panorama database program that was mentioned. And you can find me on Twitter at ProVUE Jim.
Great. Thanks for being here. Yeah, it was great. The photo man himself, Mr. Frederick Van Johnson. Frederick.
Yeah, you can find me at thisweekinphoto.com, and that's also the social handle. So at thisweekinphoto.
Great. Thanks for being here. It was a nice surprise to have you show up.
Always. Thanks for the invite.
Brittany, it's your turn, but you have to take yourself off mute.
I will. For nerdy stuff, it's probably just simpler. My Twitter handle is ADD Liberator. I don't know that anybody tells me about the other stuff I do. So, yeah, if you want to talk about nerdy Apple stuff, that's where I do that.
Okay. ADD?
Yeah, ADD Liberator.
Thanks
Ad
for being
Liberator,
here,
but for people with ADHD. Yeah, that's me.
Marina, last but not least.
I'm on Twitter at Marina Epelman, and I'm probably going to be posting the results of my experiments of trying to stump the new Apple Translate app with Russian idioms in the next few days.
Great. Thanks for being here. And seriously, thank you all. This was a whole lot of fun. We will do it again, and then hopefully you all come back for other topics and other discussions. Folks, this is Mac Voices Live. I'm Chuck Joyner. You can check us out on the regular Mac Voices show, and this will be released into the Mac Voices feeds, probably in pieces to make it a little more palatable. So until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.